This is a flow chart that I put together for air conditioner does not blow cold right here. Now this is going to be slightly different from one car to the other, right? It's going to be generally true for all cars, but when you get to the various different spots, it may be slightly different. And we're going to see, you remember the one that you looked at that you fixed the other day? We're going to see where that one fits into this. You got me? Air conditioner does not blow cold. This is where you're going to start. Does the compressor engage? How do you know if the compressor is engaged? You turn on the air conditioner, make sure you know how to turn on the air conditioner. Because on that Black Ranger out there, you'll turn on the where you think it's on air, and you turn on the fan, but until you push the fan knob and a little orange light comes on, you haven't turned on the compressor. But make sure you know how. All right. Does the compressor engage? Yes or no? Got it? If the compressor engages, are the pressures low on the suction side and how on the discharge side? Now, connecting your gauges, you're going to see some static pressure if there's refrigerant in there. And the static pressure numbers are not published anywhere. Nobody can look at the static pressures and tell if, you know, like they're going to be, they may be between 60 and 110 pounds on each side. They're going to be pretty well equal on both sides, right? If you haven't been running the AC. Now that's just with hooked to the gauges up with the car sitting there. All right. But whenever if the compressor engages, see, that's a yes. The pressure is low on the suction side and high on the discharge side. Are they? If that's true, you're going to feel the suction line. And you see, is the suction line cold and liquid line hot? Suction line is the big line that comes from the firewall and goes down into the, we call it the bulkhead now, goes down into the compressor. That line should be cold through the accumulator if it's got one all the way to the compressor if you've got enough refrigerant in there. If it's cold coming out, but it sort of gets warmer and warmer as you go, then that typically means that you don't have enough refrigerant in there. If this is really cold and the liquid line is hot, you're going to check for a problem with your heater. If the blender door is moved to the point where it's got hot air mixing with the cold air, you're going to have warm air even though everything out under the hood is working right. And so that's an important thing to look at. Now one of the ways you can do that, and I talk about it in these sheets, you make sure you know which way the coolant flows through the heater hoses, and then you pinch the one that's going into the heater core. Don't pinch the one coming out of the heater core. Why is that a bad idea? It'll bust the heater core. Yeah, and you don't want to bust the heater core because it's a pain to change that darn thing. Pinch the one going in. All right, so right here, if the pressures are not, you're going to check the compressor health and orifice or the TXV. What's TXV stand for? Thermal expansion valve. If the expansion valve or the orifice is screwed up, like for instance, let's say that both of my pressures are low. I'm talking about both of them are really low. That can be as a result of the expansion valve or the orifice clogged up. You know what I mean? One time we had a Toyota in here. It wouldn't cool. Compressors, I mean, both pressures were low. I said, okay, well, we need to go ahead and put an expansion valve on. So we did that. Everything, nothing changed, and so we backed up and put an evaporator on and took care of it. So, and that was a strange thing. I didn't really understand that. But the proof was in the pudding. When we got through, we had cold air. So we had to put an expansion valve and a evaporator for it to take care of that one. Anyway, this is basically, see, there aren't many steps there, but you're going to have to refine what you did. Quincy, if you discuss no, does the system have at least 60 psi of static pressure? See, that's why I say at least 60. If it doesn't, you're going to add either refrigerant, you're going to recharge and retest. If it does have 60 psi, I want to know, does the clutch have power? Did the clutch have power on the one that you worked on, Moody?
No,
it did not. However, when we energized the compressor clutch, what did we notice? If we jumped past the relay and energized the compressor clutch, it got cold. Everything felt normal, right? Got that? I mean, what's that tell you?
You know, power in there.
There's no power getting there, and you got to find out why. All right. So we had we go to our scan tool. Do we have a request for compressor operation from the switch on the panel? You know what I mean? Is there a request? And so if there's no, if the AC compressor, if the scan tool is telling you that the AC relay is turned off, you see, what if the AC compressor relay is turned on by the scan tool, but the AC compressor is not running?
though, interruption of power somewhere.
Well, basically, you've got a cut wire, or you've got a bad compressor clutch coil, or you got a bad ground on the other side of the clutch coil. Seen that before. Seen the wires get over against the belt, and it chopped the ground that was feeding the compressor clutch. I mean, that's well, a Buick one time we had in here. So that you got to be able to think clearly enough to do this. All right, what's this? Does the compressor clutch have power? Yes. Does the clutch feed wire show ground with the AC off? What does that mean? I'm going to take my, you remember the Altima? Who worked on the Altima? Did you do that? Okay, get the Altima here, and we found the wire that was going down the compressor clutch, and we pricked into it with our little prick tool, and we turned everything off, and we hooked the test light to the hot side, and we wanted to check and see if there was power showing there in that compressor clutch wire. And there was not, basically, right? And what would be wrong with that one?
Clutch.
The clutch was bad. That's more expensive than putting a whole compressor on it, so we popped a compressor on it, and she was cool as a cucumber for about $325. Okay. Does the compressor clutch have power? No. Scan, check for AC request, check fuses, relays, pressure switches, so on. See, this is a generic sort of a thing here. And a copy of it's available. You might notice it's right here, too. I printed it. All right. So, right here. After you add your refrigerant recharge, does the compressor engage? Right? If you say no, then you go back up here, does it have power? See, that kind of goes in a loop there. On this one here, does the clutch feed wire show ground with AC off? No. If the clutch ground is okay, in other words, the ground that's feeding the clutch, if it's okay, but you don't have ground up here and you know your circuit's good, then you replace the compressor. If there is power going down there, and there's a ground that it shows, check the compressor clutch air gap. And what you're going to do there is with the compressor turned on, when you know it should be running, these will really start out running, and then as they click off and on a few times, they'll click off, but they won't click back on. And you whack the compressor clutch with a screwdriver, and if it kicks in and cools until the next time it cycles out, you know your air gap's a little too wide. And that needs to be adjusted. Different procedures for different cars, but a lot of them have shims you put in there. I mean, you take out. All right, so anybody got any questions about that? Can you understand that little simple flow chart? I mean, I went out of my way to make sure I put it on one page, and I try not to make it so terribly complicated. This is how you're going to find out what's wrong with somebody's compressor. Now, I need refrigerant is something that's really important. Sometimes I'll see people coming over here just rolling the big machine over there when they haven't even identified the refrigerant. If you hadn't identified the refrigerant, you may pull some kind of trash gas into my machine, and then it's got issues. Because all over the countryside, people don't use the refrigerant identifiers. That's why we need one, because they don't have one. Now, here's another thing. If you're working anywhere with an air conditioner, anywhere besides this school, and you're not ESCO certified, there is a fine that can be levied against the shop that you're working at, like $32,000. That's why it's important to take your card out and show it to these guys right now. This is his card. I've got one of these cards in my wallet, but mine's kind of wore out. His is prettier than mine. They also give you a certificate to hang on the wall. Didn't cost a lot to do it, and it gives you, $12 is what he paid, and it gives you a credential. You go through that 50-question test, and you're going to know a lot more about how you're supposed to handle refrigerant than you do now. That's Moody's. That's his credential. He can actually walk into a shop and work on air conditioner. If the EPA guy comes in and says, "Where's your certification?" He pulls the card out and says, "Here it is, right here." And then the guy walks away. If he doesn't, if he's not able to show it, then the guy goes in there and says, "Excuse me, you need to write me a check for $32,000. You got me? You see how important this is? This is extremely important that you know.
So they print that out and like, where do you go to take a test?
On the computer?
Online?
Then I have to use the card.
You can do it here. You're going to have to pay for it with your credit card.
Okay, I got
It
it.
says $20 on the computer.
It says $20, but they only charge you $20. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the ESCO certification is what it is. He can show you how to get to it. All right, anybody got any questions or comments about that?
What is an AC request?
Huh?
AC request.